This is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Let's get ready to
Welcome to the Junkyard Pod. Today, we will be talking about the newest member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Jaylon Tyson, who was selected 20th overall in the NBA draft. Now, we have a lot to discuss today, and joining me to break all of this down is nobody. It's just me. My usual co-hosts are absent today, so I'm recording this one solo. And in doing so, I want to start off with a massive shout out to any creator who does this on their own, because it is not easy. And that means a special shout out to Mac Perry of the It's Cavalier pod. He's been holding it down solo all year, and he deserves a ton of recognition for that. I actually just joined Mac to discuss the draft yesterday, so if you want a little bit more of a back and forth discussion on any of this stuff, I'd recommend you go check his channel out and watch that, because today I will plan on hitting a few different topics rather than just repeating what I said on Mac's show, so that episode is still worth checking out on its own merit. For today, we're going to talk about Jaylon Tyson as a prospect, my thoughts, setting real expectations on how he fits into Cleveland, as well as the Cavs choosing to stay out of the second round, missing on a few interesting prospects who I think might have been worth a look. But before we officially start today, let me just say, if you enjoy the Junkyard Pod, please consider hitting subscribe and dropping a like. That support really does help the channel, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And stay tuned later throughout this weekend, because I will have some other NBA offseason stuff to look forward to. It's just a fun time to be talking Cavs, so stick around. Now, getting into today's episode, the Cavs select Tyson with the 20th pick. And I think it's important to start by setting realistic expectations and what it means to be the 20th pick in the NBA draft. Because I see people saying, oh, who cares? It's the 20th pick. He's never going to play for the team anyways. He's going to be in the G League. He's going to get traded. And then I also see people who are furious that the Cavs didn't select a wing who can come in and save the day right away. So I'm seeing all the Twitter discourse, and it's as contradictory and insane as usual. I'll just start by saying this. Let's not be angry at imaginary things, okay? Look at the prospects who were available at 20. Now, maybe you preferred someone like Deron Holmes, which I did personally, but it's not like the Cavs passed up on some generational 3-and-D talent here, or even someone with a real shot at being the starting small forward. That didn't happen. So let's calm down. Let's not be too angry about this pick. It's the 20th selection in a draft that isn't exactly loaded. I mean, even at the top pick of the entire class, Zachary Risache, he's a guy who projects to be a 3-and-D role player. That's some of the best options they had in this entire class. So, when you fall all the way to 20th, if you were expecting a magic bullet to save the Cavs and address their need for a legit wing, that was just never going to happen. So I think it's silly to be upset over that. Focusing on the other side of things, this pick isn't exactly a wash either. This isn't something that we should just dismiss and ignore. You can look no further than the very players on the roster right now. Max Strus, Dean Wade, Karis LeVert, even Jarrett Allen, Sam Merrill, Craig Porter, hell, even George Niang were all selected 20th or later in the NBA draft. Some of those guys went undrafted altogether, and that's half the damn rotation I just named. Jarrett Allen was the 22nd pick in the 2017 NBA draft, and he's one of the most important players on the roster. So let's not pretend that A, the 20th pick is completely meaningless, or B, the Cavs can't upgrade, because the supporting guys who are currently playing minutes, they weren't exactly lottery picks either. So I don't think this is something that we should completely ignore, but I also don't think it's something that we should get too excited about. There's a healthy medium that we should look for, and that's what I'm going to try and do today by talking actual expectations when it comes to Tyson. Look, I don't expect him to be a guy who moves the needle. In his first season, maybe he never moves the needle at all. But I also don't expect him to be in the G League that much either. Now, I'm sure he'll spend some time there, but at least in my estimation, I think Tyson is likely going to see plenty of opportunities to play for the Cavaliers this season. And I actually think his path to getting into the 8 to 10 man rotation is more clear than people think. And that's mainly because he brings something the Cavaliers desperately need, and that's offensive versatility. So who exactly is Tyson as a player? Well, he averaged roughly 20 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists in a high usage role for the University of California last year. He's listed at 6'7" with shoes, although he did measure 6'5.5" without them in the draft combine. Now, it's worth noting that that's basically the same size as Mikal Bridges and Jaylen Brown. So even though Tyson doesn't have that insane go-go gadget arms that Brown and Bridges have, he still does have a plus wingspan at 6'8". He's not a jumbo-sized wing, but he's certainly capable of playing the position, and he's an NBA-level athlete. He's not as athletic as Brown or Bridges. I don't want you to think that I'm making a one-to-one comparison, but when you look at the current Cavaliers, some guys such as Sam Merrill and George Niang, you can see how it's worth noting. And so what are his strengths? Well, Tyson excels as a space creator. He has a tight handle. He's really good at shifting his body and using momentum as a weapon. He's got great footwork and a feel for manipulating defenders, and he can shoot the ball. He shot in the 76th percentile on pull-up jumpers last year, and he shot 37% from deep throughout his collegiate career, while being a 78% free throw shooter, so I feel confident that this dude can shoot. He's not a great playmaker, but he has some potential to be a connective piece for the Cavs. And he's been a solid rebounder in college, so that's something that could help him tremendously when it comes to earning minutes on this team. And okay, so you might say he's not going to play with the ball in his hands that much, so how does he really help this team? To that, I'll say two things. First, we just saw the Boston Celtics win a championship behind the idea of having every player on the roster being capable of dribbling the ball. So we need to get rid of this 1980s mentality that, oh, there's only one ball to go around. Like, yeah, we know there's only one ball. It's why it's really important that you don't have players who don't know what to do when they get the ball. Think of the freeze frame moments we have seen from Okoro or Dean Wade, where it's basically just 5 seconds being burned off the clock because you know neither one of them is going to create an advantage or attack with the ball. And now that's not a complete stray at my beloved Okoro because I'm still a believer, but it's just the truth. There's only one ball to go around, and so it's actually better if everyone on the team can do something with that. And I would just rather load up on as many guys who can pass, dribble, and shoot as possible. That's the thought process behind drafting Tyson. You look at the current roster, outside of Garland, Mitchell, and LeVert, who else is capable of doing all three of those things, passing, dribbling, and shooting? I mean, seriously, that's 3 players on a modern NBA team that can actually do modern NBA things. That's a problem. That's just as much of a problem as their lack of a wing. Tyson is a guy who can do all of those things. At least he projects to be a guy who can do those things. Again, he has the size to play the wing, even if he isn't that jumbo-sized wing we've been looking for. Certainly big enough to share minutes there. And also, he's not a frail guy either. Let's acknowledge the frame. He has the muscle to play this position compared to someone like LeVert. And again, I get it. We're tired of the Cavs taking guys who probably should be shooting guards and trying to force them into that wing position, but you got to be real with what was available in this draft, what was on the board. A true wing, a true generational 3-and-D wing, that just wasn't there. And so you take a guy like Tyson who maybe he isn't the perfect fit, maybe he doesn't have the size that you're looking for, but it's not an egregious fit either. He genuinely, I think, can play the wing, and he brings that offensive versatility and the shooting that should translate to the NBA level. And that brings me back to my second point here in regards to Tyson not getting as many reps on the ball in Cleveland as he did during his junior year at Cali. And the good news is, well, he has experience playing in an off-ball role. His sophomore year with Texas Tech, Tyson played more without the rock, and he finished in the 97th percentile as a cutter and the 90th percentile as a catch-and-shoot threat. Again, take all of this with a grain of salt. It's impossible to predict how any prospect, will translate to the NBA, let alone the 20th pick in a relatively weak draft. But these are all things to consider and keep in mind. Tyson has the skill set of a player who can really, really help this Cavalier team, both with the ball and playing without it. He brings a lot of value offensively that I don't think we should overlook. If you want me to balance all of this out with some genuine concerns, well, here you go. Here are the questions that I have for Tyson as a player at the NBA level. First and foremost, will his shooting and 3-level scoring translate? That's basically a non-negotiable here. If he can't score at all 3 levels or at the very least be a knockdown 3-point threat, then he's not going to see many minutes in the NBA. I do believe in his ability to do these things, but it's of course something that he has to prove. And then there's his playmaking. He showed some connectivity, but can he put it together at the speed of the NBA and actually be a competent decision maker? That's going to be key in his development. Think of someone like Max Strus and the secondary playmaking that Strus can offer. That's something that, again, it's close to being a non-negotiable for Tyson. You have to be able to trust him with the ball in his hands, even if he won't be playing in such a high usage role like he did in California. You're going to have to be able to trust him to make the right decision. That's something that might take some time. And finally, the last of my concerns, but it's still worth mentioning, the defensive side of the ball. He's not a great defensive prospect from basically everything that I can tell. The key here, can he develop into a player who can hold his own defensively? Can he do just enough to fit in a team system and avoid being a black hole? Again, he's the 20th pick in the draft. So there's no guarantee that the Cavs are ever going to rely on him for key minutes in the regular season or in the playoffs. But if Tyson is going to reach his ceiling and become that type of pivotal player who can really move the needle, he will have to develop into a competent defender. You have to be reliable on both ends of the floor in today's NBA. If he is such a weak point that teams continue to attack him and he's just completely vulnerable on that side of the floor, it's going to be hard for him to reach his ceiling. And hey, listen, the dude said he plans on being on the all-defensive team as a rookie, which is ludicrous, but I respect the confidence being that high. The Cavs have been lacking players with delusional confidence for a while, and as crazy as it sounds, you know what? They could use a little Dion Waiters on the roster. They could use that mentality with some of their guys. So those are my thoughts on Tyson. I like the pick. I think he's an intriguing fit with this dynamic offensive skill set that he could potentially bring when you pair it with Kenny Atkinson entering the fray and potentially bringing a motion offense with him. I think Tyson is a pretty good fit in whatever Atkinson has envisioned. And so I'm very excited to see how they develop him. If I had to guess, I'd say best case scenario in his rookie season, Tyson can get in the 8-man regular season rotation and then maybe see spot minutes in the playoffs. That's where it gets a little dicey. I think he's a guy who might be able to help throughout 82 games, but then once you get to the playoffs, he kind of gets faded out of the rotation as the stakes get higher. You can think of someone like Sam Merrill or even Craig Porter Jr. as what type of role Tyson could play with the Cavs this year. I think maybe even slightly above that in the best case scenario, but either way, I'm excited about Tyson. I think the Cavs can afford to develop him, even if he doesn't make an instant impact this season. He's worth keeping an eye on for a team who they have little avenues, very few avenues toward improving the fringe of their rotation. And so even if it takes a couple of years for Tyson to fully develop into a helpful NBA player, I think the Cavs, they can afford to wait a little bit in that regard. Moving into our final topics here, and I just want to go rapid fire on some of my thoughts on the second round. I know the Cavs were reportedly aggressive, looking to get a second round pick. Guess they weren't aggressive enough because it didn't happen. They remained out of the draft while guys like Kyle Filipowski, who I don't know if anyone has seen what's going on with him. I won't get into that right now, but that is one of the most strange controversies I can remember in quite a while for an NBA player. And then there was Tyler Smith as well going off the board. That's the one that really stung me. The Cavs have had this gap in their rotation since losing Kevin Love. They've been missing that stretch four who can stagger minutes with Allen and Mobley, open up the floor for them. They tried Niang. They paid the price for trying Niang. And so I would have loved giving Smith a chance to fill that position. He's just a lights out 6'10 shooter with athleticism and the potential to be a versatile defender. So I really do wish they would have given him a chance, assuming the price to get into the second round wasn't anything crazy. I would have really liked to see them take a chance on Smith or even Filipowski to fill that role. With that said, though, I do understand not wanting to bank too much on two different rookies this season. You are trying to win as soon as possible, and you don't want to conflict your timeline too much, especially when you have already invested some time into Craig Porter Jr. and Emoni Bates, who, and I'm sorry if this comes off as a stray, and I really don't mean to be a hater, but let's be real about Emoni Bates at this stage in his career. Okay, I see the comments and the tweets all the time. Why isn't Emoni playing? Emoni should be starting. Let's relax a little bit, guys. Watch him play. Pull off the rose-tinted glasses and look at how far his game still has to go. He is not quite at the NBA level yet. The kid can shoot. There's absolutely no doubt he's a lights-out three-point shooter, but he has a lot of work to do. basically every other facet of the game. And look, he's only 20. Okay, he's 20 years old. It might take him some time before he gets to that point. I'm certainly rooting for him, but he's just not there at this present moment. So I think we need to stop. I think the frenzy about Emoni Bates needs to cool down a little bit. The last thing I want to say here, Bronny James being selected by the Lakers. Just an awesome, incredible moment. Objectively, one of the coolest things in the history of sports, not just basketball, but sports. It's completely unfathomable that LeBron has been this great for this long, and now he gets to do something just completely unheard of. So I'm very excited to see that. The complaints about nepotism and stuff is super silly. I'm not even going to argue about that. Listen, Luke Walton is currently employed by the Cavaliers. So what are we even talking about? What are we complaining about? And to round this out, I'm glad the Cavs didn't select Bronny because, one, LeBron's not coming back, guys. I'm sorry. We just have to be real. It's not happening. And two, as much as I think Bronny is a worthy NBA prospect and the nepotism stuff is a little overblown, who cares? Why would the Cavs draft Bronny? He's not a fit for this team, and using it as an attempt to lure LeBron back, that's just an unserious move. That would have been disastrous for a team that, if we were a lottery team, sure, but this is a team that has genuine championship aspirations, and pulling a stunt like that, especially when Rich Paul is telling teams not to take Bronny, it's just not a move that I would have been happy with. So I'm very glad that they didn't. And it's okay to move on at this point and just let it go. I think it's awesome to see a father and son who are going to play together in the NBA regardless. So there's nothing to complain about. That's going to do it for this solo episode of the Junkyard Pod. Thank you to everyone who watched or listened to this one. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me if you hit subscribe or drop a like and leave a comment as well. What do you think of Tyson as a pick? Do you think he can help the Cavs? Share your thoughts. I would really love to know. And stay tuned because this weekend I will have another episode where me and Jackson plan on going rapid fire to discuss a list of potential free agency targets for the Cavs. Free agency starts on Sunday, so you don't want to miss this preview of the craziness that is sure to follow. So stick around and hit subscribe, and go Cavs.